In the previous module, we explored how the Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRE, enforces real estate statutes and administrative rules, and how the Real Estate Commissioner may issue substantive policy statements, SPS, to clarify how those laws are applied. Now, we turn to the final pillar of Arizona's legal framework, case law, also known as common law. While the Arizona Constitution, statutes, and administrative rules provide the written framework of the law, case law represents how the courts interpret and apply those laws in real-life situations. Every time a court decides a case involving a real estate dispute, such as a breach of contract, an agency relationship issue, or a property disclosure conflict, it creates a precedent, which becomes part of Arizona's body of case law. Understanding case law is essential for real estate professionals because it provides insight into how judges interpret laws, settle disputes, and set legal standards that must be followed by everyone in the profession. Definition of case law. Case law is the collection of judicial decisions made by courts that interpret and apply the law to specific disputes. It is also referred to as judge-made law because it is developed through court rulings rather than legislation. When a judge issues an opinion in a case, that decision becomes part of Arizona's case law and can influence how future cases are decided. For example, if a dispute arises over whether an agent properly disclosed a material defect, the court's decision in that case will shape how future agents are expected to act in similar situations. Case law is considered an authoritative source of law in Arizona and works alongside statutes, ARS, administrative rules, AAC, and constitutional provisions to form a complete legal system. It ensures that laws are interpreted consistently and fairly across the state. Definition of common law. Common law refers to the body of legal principles and traditions that originated in England and were brought to America during the colonial period. It is the foundation of the American legal system, including Arizona's. While case law refers to specific judicial rulings, common law represents broader legal doctrines and unwritten rules developed through centuries of court decisions. These principles often fill in the gaps where no statute or rule exists. In Arizona, common law remains influential in areas such as contracts, property rights, and agency relationships, core elements of real estate. For example, common law establishes that a real estate agent owes certain fiduciary duties to their client, including loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. These duties are not explicitly listed in statutes, but are recognized and enforced through centuries of common law tradition and supported by case law rulings. Relationship between case law and common law. Although closely related, case law and common law serve slightly different functions. Case law refers to the individual decisions made by Arizona courts, while common law represents the collection of long-standing legal principles that those decisions rely upon. Each new court ruling adds to or clarifies the body of common law, creating a living system that evolves over time. In Arizona, when a court encounters an issue not clearly addressed by statute or administrative rule, it often relies on common law principles and past judicial decisions, known as precedents, to reach a fair outcome. This approach ensures consistency while allowing flexibility as society and business practices change. Example: if a case arises where a buyer sues a seller for failing to disclose a defect not explicitly covered in the purchase contract, the court may rely on previous rulings, such as Hill v. Jones, 1986, to determine the seller's duty of disclosure. That decision becomes binding precedent, influencing how future disputes of similar nature will be decided. Case law in Arizona. Real estate practice. In real estate, case law plays a critical role in defining and clarifying professional obligations, contractual rights, and consumer protections. Some of the most important Arizona real estate principles have developed through court rulings. Barnes versus Lopez, 1985, defined how offers and counteroffers are legally binding under contract law. Hill versus Jones, 1986, established that sellers and agents must disclose known defects that materially affect the property's value, even if not specifically requested by the buyer. Lombardo versus Albu, 1999, clarified the limits of an agent's fiduciary duties when representing multiple parties in a transaction. Each of these cases added new clarity to existing statutes, ensuring that the law adapts to changing market practices and expectations. Example in practice: a listing agent learns that a home's roof was previously damaged by termites but repaired before listing. The seller chooses not to mention this in the seller's property disclosure statement, SPDS. Later, the buyer discovers the prior damage and sues for non-disclosure. The court, citing Hill versus Jones, rules that the seller and agent had a duty to disclose because the condition materially affected the value of the property. This case reinforces that both statutory and common law disclosure duties exist, shaping how future agents must act in similar scenarios. Why case law matters to licensees. For real estate licensees, understanding case law is essential for 3 reasons. Guidance and practice. Case law illustrates how courts interpret statutes and rules, allowing licensees to better anticipate how their actions might be judged in a dispute. Legal consistency. Court decisions ensure that similar situations are treated the same way throughout Arizona, promoting fairness and predictability. Professional responsibility. By learning from past court cases, licensees can avoid common mistakes that have led to disciplinary action or lawsuits. When a real estate professional acts without regard for established case law, they risk violating the standards of conduct outlined in both ARS Title 32, Chapter 20, and AAC Title 4, Chapter 28. Knowing relevant case precedents helps protect the agent, their clients, and the integrity of the profession. Review summary. In this section, you learn the difference between case law and common law and how they apply to Arizona real estate. Case law refers to judicial decisions made by courts, while common law refers to the long-standing legal principles developed over time through those decisions. Both sources of law influence how real estate transactions are interpreted, how disputes are resolved, and how licensees are held accountable. Through cases like Barnes versus Lopez and Hill versus Jones, courts have established standards for offer and acceptance, disclosure, and fiduciary duty. Principles every Arizona licensee must understand and apply in practice. Discussion 1. What is case law? Answer. Case law is the collection of court decisions that interpret and apply existing statutes, rules, and legal principles to specific cases. 2. How does common law differ from case law? Answer. Common law refers to long-standing legal principles developed through centuries of judicial decisions, while case law refers to the actual rulings made by courts that interpret those principles. 3. Why is case law important in real estate? Answer. It helps define professional duties, clarify contracts, and establish legal standards for issues like disclosure and fiduciary responsibility. 4. What happens when a court decides a new case on an unclear legal issue? Answer. The decision becomes precedent, shaping how future similar cases will be decided. 5. What is an example of an Arizona case law decision that affects real estate disclosure? Answer. Hill versus Jones, 1986, which established the duty of sellers and agents to disclose known material defects. Closing remarks. Case law and common law form the foundation of fairness and consistency within Arizona's real estate system. They ensure that every law, rule, and professional standard has meaning in real-world situations. For real estate professionals, understanding these court-made principles is more than a legal requirement. It is a professional responsibility. By learning from past judicial decisions, agents and brokers can protect their clients' interests, reduce risk, and uphold the ethical and legal standards that define Arizona real estate practice. In the next module, we will explore how Arizona courts establish legal precedent and how those precedents influence future rulings and enforcement by the ADRE.